Why do I bake? I bake because I didn't know it would become second nature to me once I began doing it. I've acquired a change in my life about 4 years ago, and I just started baking. So much more than I did before. I am drawn to artisanal breads and pastries. The fancy, ornate ones, the wedding cakes, the birthday cakes, it's everybody else's job. But for me, I find making the rustic ones is like it's like connecting with centuries past and how people nourish themselves, how they were sated in their daily lives. And for romantics, I think today it's become quite the subculture. Sourdough, rye bread, ciabatta, baguettes, focaccia. The oldest bread in the world is called quern, first noted in Egypt, I think. But I imagine Adam and Eve, after Eden, already made some kind of a flat bread from milled whole wheat, which they maybe pummeled rock on rock. And that probably became like a staple in no time. You know, Galileo invented the telescope, right? Columbus, he proved that the world wasn't flat. Newton, he discovered gravity. But Jesus of Nazareth, he said, I am the bread of life. And yet it was he that caused the foremost tectonic change in mankind's consciousness, didn't he? That's why there's BC, or before Christ. And then there's Anno Domini, or the year of our Lord. Our epochs are defined after him. I believe it's because with the word bread, he struck a seminal chord that was fundamental with all people, past, present, and future. Something simple, something basic, something needed. Indeed, what would a telescope or any other invention be if the scientists have had no bread to eat? Not to be simplistic, of course. I love feeling the dough as a whole. I like it that from chaos, as in the messy part when the elements are not homogenized just yet, with work and time, it becomes this one whole lump which I am able to feel under the palms of my hand, to squeeze, to roll, to knead. With artisanal breads, there is a sense of unpredictability in baking them. I like it that no two breads are alike. Hence, each one is unique, one might say. I bake by hand because it's when I know whether there's enough moisture in the dough or not. And then there's the smell. That redolent, subtle, fermented smell. that blends with the yeast, with the aroma of wheat, as if there's a promise of very pleasant possibilities coming. And when it's all said and done, it's going to be something good. One can look forward to it. I know I do. And the people inside my house do too. When a hand baker needs, they pretty much can ascertain the finished product already. From the consistency of the bread inside, and the contractability of it as a whole, the baker establishes a relationship with the bread, as it were. One can tell whether the baker loves what they're doing while kneading. If they feel the tedium of it, you might not have it in your blood. Sure, there's a perfunctory aspect of it, but to be honest, I deem it as therapeutic. Unless I become massively commercial, I'd still bake by hand. As much as I can hold it out, I just want to be a hand baker. Take the yeast, for example. I put 1 teaspoon of it, let's say, and it can make the dough abound. It rises and even crawls out of the proofing bin if you leave it alone too long. Perhaps it's why the Hebrews don't use it as often. It reminds them of sin. A little sin can ruin an entire life, I imagine the rabbi would say. Matzah, yeastless bagels, Passover breads, challah, although challah has yeast, and that's my most favorite bread of the Jewish breads. Okay, that may not have been an upbeat allegory, but you know what I mean. In the place where I live right now, in the Philippines, the commercial breads in town are mostly sweet. So expats from, say, the US, Europe, and Australia who aren't used to this in their palate, they lament a little. My main customer right now, who owns a restaurant which serves hoagies, he's a Texan. You know, it's edifying when I hear the words, "Yours is the only bread I eat by itself in this whole country." It's high praise that I don't deserve because I know, inwardly, that as a baker, I'm still infantile. I'm self-taught because I consider this passion as an art. Not to sound grandiose, but to me, it's an escape, let's just say. An escape that one can gourmandize. I study techniques all over the place, and there isn't just one recipe for one bread item for me. It's typically an amalgamation of about 2 or 3 bakers and pastry chefs. Then there's the part where you will have to put your own arc into it, your own flair. And it becomes your brand of bread. And when the patrons, when they can tell apart what's yours and prefers it too, that's when you know you've created something worthwhile. That's when you know baking becomes grace. A baking grace.